Today, I'm going to be recapping some of the healing, nutritional, mindful trauma principles that I've learned over 4 years of doing eating enlightenment, as well as 4 years of working in an eating disorder residential treatment center, which is where I'm currently employed. I've been in the health industry for longer than that personal trainer, yoga teacher, but it's really been these last 4 years that I've really dialed in to the eating side of things. So that's going to be this video today, but there are two more videos that are going to be coming out soon, which will, the second video will be about the personal lessons that I have learned blogging and going through this 4 year journey of trying to become an eating coach and sort of the things I've learned personally. So the first video, this video is going to be about healing principles, steps on how you can start to heal a troubled relationship with food and sort of how to think about this because it's a complex topic. And so I'll try to give you a 10,000-foot blueprint in this video. Next video will be about the lessons I've learned personally. And the third video will be about sort of my future directions and actually some ongoing projects that I'm really excited about and that kind of tie into mental health overall, but that is a distinct pivot and to kind of catch you up on what I've been doing. Okay, so let's just dive into this video. I'm going to start with the lesson that I've learned the most, and that's trauma. When I first got certified as an intuitive eater, intuitive eating certification, I had sort of known about trauma, but I didn't realize how central it was to eating disorders, binge eating, anorexic, just being super picky, thinking about food all the time. I didn't realize that trauma is so often this block that is there and we don't know it's there and we don't want it to be there. And we hate that it's there. We hate having to spend all this time and emotional energy, and it's a frustrating process working with trauma. Most humans don't want to do it, myself included. I think that's one of the core lessons that I've learned over the years, that it all comes back down to trauma. It really does. And so over the past few years, what I'll do is I'll quickly outline working with trauma, some approaches that I find to be relevant that have helped me personally. I'll spend a few more words talking about trauma, but before going on too deeply about trauma, you might be wondering about food. If you're struggling with food, you might think you got to eat better, or you have to have the right plan, or you have to have more willpower to follow the plan. Some combination of that. You might think you're just missing a little bit of information. So I want to address that, and then I'm going to circle back to trauma, because let's talk about food real quick. After all, this channel is primarily about healing a food relationship. The food is the surface layer. You need to have enough food in you. You need to have your body hydrated. You need to have your body nourished so that you can think straight, so that you have enough fuel in your brain to do the trauma work. At the eating disorder center where I work, oftentimes people are so depleted, they're malnourished, that they really can't think that straight, which makes healing trauma worse. The eating disorder where I'm at, center where I'm at, is primarily there's a lot of food. There's a structured regimen of eating. That's the core of healing a food relationship at the beginning, is structured eating, where you are getting the nutrients you need every day and following that plan to the best of your ability. So step one is doing that. Eating regular all the time, every day, period. Okay. That's step one, but it doesn't need to be more complicated than that. In other words, try to do that as best you can. Eating regularly, you might need support on this. I understand how difficult it can be, whether that's accountability or apps or support teams. We need support in this journey. We absolutely need support. You cannot do it alone. It's too tough to do on your own. You absolutely need guidance to work with someone who's going to hold you to the straight and narrow, that's going to really insist upon structured, regular eating, no ifs, ands, or buts. Um, that can be a nutritionist, that can be a dietitian, someone to work with you on food. However, I think where most people go wrong is that's where they stop. And I see this all the time at the eating disorder center as well. To me, it's so apparent that there's trauma underlying this, and that stopping at the food is going to just, it's not going to get to the root of the problem. And these issues are going to persist in different forms. They won't go away entirely just by doing the food thing right. I see so many people that are deny they have trauma, that really don't think they have trauma. And I was the same way um, for so long. I had to be really forced into therapy. I was in graduate school, and my professor basically gave me an ultimatum saying, you start seeing a therapist, or I'm not going to let you graduate. In a nutshell, I mean, I was furious. I was mad. Um, I was thinking, is this illegal? Like, but I said, screw it. I'll give 3 months of therapy a shot. I went in the first day. Yo, my parents were good. I was not abused. We're good. They never emotionally manipulated me. Like, I'm good. I'm just here because of school. And lo and behold, here I am, still with the same therapist 8 years later, and um, still working on some of the core issues that I have. My life has gotten immeasurably better, but trauma is a wound that is part of my system, we'll say. You know, it's part of my operating system. And it's important to sort of accept that, to sort of understand trauma without any shame. It's sort of like if you were born without an arm, right? It's not your fault, but there is a handicap. And if you don't see this handicap, then you're going to go through life sort of blind. You're going to be wondering why you're different, why it just doesn't work out the way you want it to work out. And it's like you'll be blind. You'll somehow think you're normal, or there's nothing wrong with you, and you'll be going through life thinking you have two arms, but really got one arm tied behind your back. And that's why these things that are so difficult, food, so many people are actually don't normal people think that food is easy, right? They don't even think about food. They just maintain their body weight and it's all easy. Um, for whatever reason, good luck. I don't know what you call it. I think 30, 40, 50% of the population is just securely attached. They don't have much trauma. It doesn't really impact them. Uh, God bless those people. They had good enough parents. Who knows why some people get the raw end of the deal. But research is showing that it's called adverse childhood events, that these go far beyond just being raped, or the being in an accident, having a murder, um, having abuse, any type of abuse. These are the obvious forms of trauma, but the adverse childhood experiences incorporates things such as a family member having a mental disorder, a family member having a substance abuse problem, a family member spending time away from the family, whether that's due to criminality or just time away from the family. Um, they go through a bunch of different other things, which if you say yes to like 5 of them, I forget the numbers off the top of my head, but this is an indicator of trauma. So you can have trauma through minor forms of trauma if there's a bunch of them. I know for me, having gone through my trauma all these years and just really immersing myself, my big one is emotional neglect, right? So that's my big one. Didn't get the connection as a kid, and developed all these ways of compensating to manage the pain. So even as an adult, I still have these sort of default habits that I go to manage pain: weed, sometimes food, overworking, you name it. I still have these freaking patterns. They're really annoying sometimes and very painful. Um, but my life is also completely different as well. These wounds have been also the gateway for me to develop into a more authentic person. I think for the first 20, 5 years of my life, 24 years of my life, I was blind to who I was. I was blind to the wound. I was trying to cover up the wound, and I was going through life absolutely miserable. It wasn't working. Life wasn't working for me. And so while I was in denial, while I resented trauma, why I didn't want to face it, why I didn't think I had it, blah 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 blah, it was there the whole damn time. And if you're struggling with food, it's it's there. All right, it is there. And that is one of the most, that's the point of this video, is like, do the food, get the heat, get the, if you struggle with food, do the structured eating, do that every day, get some support on that so you stay accountable, and just, but then get some other support as well to work on trauma. Trauma is a lifelong journey. I'm not sugarcoating it. It gets better, but learning about trauma and the nuances of it, and just wrapping your whole mind around it, is just it takes years. I think it's taken me years to really get it. And that's because when we're damaged in our youth, when for me, I didn't have that connection I needed as a baby. When my brain, first 3 years of your life, 80% of your brain gets wired. So if you're having some damage, misconnections, attunement issues, safety issues, lack of connection, these attachment problems in the first 3 years, it's just hard to rewire your brain. So much of your brain gets wired when you're young. So then it just takes forever to change it when you're later. It's a huge reason why we need a lot more resources for young mothers, so that they can be there for their kids. Something I feel very strongly about today, because the consequences of dealing with trauma are just, they're so long term. It's not fun to even think about this stuff, and how difficult and how painful it is to work with trauma. But nonetheless, that is the message I have for you, that there are many proven pathways to work with trauma. I'm going to name a few now. There is a way that where it gets better. There is evidence-based approaches for trauma. Trauma is the thing that's holding you back from a more normal relationship with food, a more peaceful relationship with food. So get the food, don't spend too much time on the food, but then start to go into the trauma. That's the point. I recommend somatic approaches. All right. So normal types of therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, that can be great. Acceptance and commitment therapy can be another great one. Working on emotional regulation, that can be like a first step. If you're not ready for trauma, work on your emotional regulation. So cognitive behavioral therapy, dialectical behavioral therapy, acceptance and commitment therapy, mindfulness. These are emotional regulation therapies. They don't go into trauma. All right, they stay there. So that's great. That'll help you. That'll help you with the food plan, get those emotional things, but start going into trauma when you're ready. I'm talking EMDR, I'm talking somatic experiencing, attachment-based therapies for trauma. There are a lot of different tools out there, and that's where you sort of go back into childhood and sort of understand those patterns on a feeling level, on a body level. Internal family systems is by far my favorite approach for everything. I think it does incorporate both a lot of the mindfulness as well as the trauma parts. Especially for trauma, internal family systems is great. Hakomi is great. So these are some methods that you might want to research and explore if you're ready to deal with trauma. If you're not quite there yet, if you need help with emotions, getting more stable emotionally, then it's the three main ones: DBT, ACT, and cognitive behavioral therapy. So that's sort of my blueprint in dealing with and healing with a troubled food relationship: is structured eating, get support, work on the emotional regulation piece if needed. Because sometimes people, they're fine with the emotions, but they keep on doing the same patterns. And that's where you got to go into trauma. There's just no way around it. It sucks. It fucking sucks. It fucking sucks. It's that thing you don't want to face. It's that shadow in the closet you don't want to face. But there are ways you can gradually, safely release the pain, or you gradually expose yourself in a safe way where it's not too much all at once, so that the shame doesn't flood the system. There are a lot of safety approaches to trauma. This is a well understood field. There is a blueprint that I'm not going to go into deeper into this, but explore the world of trauma. Explore that world. Get to know the world of trauma, because that's where the eating, that's how you heal it at the end of the day. Okay, so that's this video. Um, and what I'm going to go ahead and do is just transition now to the what will be the second video.